Welcome back to Switch to Linux. It is Monday and it's time for another Top 5. And we are actually going to talk about the top 5 reasons why Elementary OS is not for new users. Frankly, I don't even think it's for advanced users. But that's another opinion in and of itself. So what we're going to do here is I've identified, now I have actually quite a large list of various problems with Elementary OS, and I will be unveiling more of that down the road. But I did identify the top 5 reasons I think that Elementary OS is not really a good Linux distro for new users. And this is a little bit on the frightening side because if you look at their website, it seems to be targeted to new users. But I can't really get a feel of it because they don't have a lot of who they're about, who are they targeted to. But just to look at the marketing, this is a fast open replacement for Windows and Mac OS is what they say. It's a Elementary OS is a beautiful, powerful operating system that will run well even on old PCs. And a fast, low-maintenance platform can be installed virtually anywhere. And I actually doubt that because I don't think you can get, ARM installations, for example. Lightweight and fast, completely community-based, has a flair for design and appearances. And if you just kind of look at the marketing stuff, it really gears itself in a general direction towards people looking to change. No ads, no spying. This is why I switched over to Linux. I want to get away from Windows and what they were doing. And so down here, if you want to grab it, there is some misconception that it costs money. If you just enter 0 here, well, number lap doesn't boot up, then you can actually just download it right here as well. So you can just hit 0 there if you want to. Now I would encourage you that if this is a option like a distro that you use on a regular basis or you believe in the project, definitely support them for a certain amount. But what you'll notice there is that I had no option. I'm just simply downloading a file now, and what the file, I assume that the file is going to work on my AMD 64, but I really don't know for sure. I didn't have any options as to what the type of processor was. They don't give me any information on this page about the computer, about what type of processor, and particularly say, you can do this on an old computer. Well, apparently if your computer is 32-bit, I don't know if it'll work. I'm not sure if there's going to be anywhere. I was looking for this basic information. It might be around, but I can't find it. What are the system requirements to run it? And all of those are things that you want to look into when you are deciding if this is something that you want to run. And there's numerous other problems. I think I'll probably do a dedicated video to a lot of the challenges. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop right there. And move on with my top 5 list. Number 1, I had several installation issues. I actually had to restart the installer multiple times. On the 4th time I installed it, it actually worked. And so it took me, I want to say it actually took me 2 hours to get this running. For comparison, a lot of your other distros, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, not a lot of problems. Certainly not 2 hours to install. And for someone that knows what they're doing and on a computer with a quad-core processor and 32 gigs of RAM, it should not have taken me 2 hours to install. Part of it is how many times I had to restart the installer because it kept crashing, and part of it simply was it took way longer than any other distro to install that I've worked with in a long time. So there were installation issues that I had. Number 2 is that the AppCenter kept crashing. Now that eventually was resolved by doing updates through the terminal, which did not give me any problems. Now here's why that's a problem. Remember that this video is the top 5 reasons it's not good for new users. Okay? The thing is that when a person first comes over to Linux and they're using it for the first time, the terminal will scare the bejeebers out of them. Now, those of us that know how to do this stuff, getting into the terminal, doing updates, installing software is generally the way we want to prefer to do it. But on this and installed the, went into the App Center, and that's another thing I kept on having a problem with is if you move your mouse over to the middle, it gets rid of your guy there. All right, so basically I'd come over here into the App Center and running this onto the App Center, the thing it kept crashing on me. It would not work. It kept crashing. It gave me all sorts of issues, all sorts of problems, whether I was doing it on this computer or on the other computer. It just kept crashing. When I actually go into the terminal down here and I did the sudo apt update, I got to do apt update, and you want to run the update command. Running the update and running the upgrade command, or the commands that you needed to do, those did not give me any problems. And so with that, once I did that, it seemed to bring some stability back, but then I'd still have a lot of issues where this system freezes a lot. And I'll get more into that later on. The system would freeze a lot, not just the App Store. The other place I've had a lot of system freezing is doing the shortcutting. So, you know, the App Center, though, it kept crashing. It was eventually stabilized, but a new user just does not know to go into the terminal, especially on elementary. It's hard to find the terminal. You know, I mean, it's up here. You just come up here and do your terminal. For sure. But regardless, a new user, it's not on the dock initially. You don't really know what it is. You may not even know what you're looking for. To ask a new user to go into the terminal and run the updates that way, you might be asking for a lot. Remember how you were when you first started Linux the very first time, assuming you didn't start in the periods of DOS when that was still common. Number 3. Very complicated steps to install some very common applications. Okay, and so I started to think about this, and well, there's a lot of apps out there I may or may not want to use. Like, you know, I use Skype because I am still a business person. I need to communicate with a lot of people, and if I can't get Skype installed, that's a problem. The thing is that Elementary intentionally removes the ability for you to install PPAs and installing .deb packages, which will help prevent the system from crashing if you don't know what you're doing. But what that intrinsically means is that out of the box, you can't install Skype, you can't install Spotify, you can't install, I mean, like, you know, there was like Google Earth, a lot of applications that other distros are making it easier and easier to install, like the new Linux Mint 18.3, single installation for all of these things. But Elementary, snaps are not enabled by default. That's how I end up putting Spotify on, is, you know, install your Snap app application, which I'm not sure if you could actually install that from the App Center or not. Let's check that. I did not check if you can install it. I don't even know if that's ever an option or not. No, it's not. So you'd have to do it. And I did it through the terminal. I installed Snap through the terminal. I had to enable the PPAs through the terminal so that I can install applications that I have to use. So the thing is that, well, I don't care for those applications. A lot of new users who are used to the ecosystem that has been forcing apps on us rather than going to the websites are looking for those apps when they get onto the Linux system. And if you increase the barrier to coming over by having the inability to install them easily from the App Center, but also removing the ability to install PPAs to get the apps they need working, it completely is a turnoff. People will come on here, they'll figure this out, and then, of course, another item, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the future as well, but one of the problems that Elementary has had is that every time they did a release, they've really broken and changed a lot of the core of how the thing works. You have to know, are you installing for Loki or are you installing for Freya? You know, so you have to get into that idea. And so what I did is I just looked up some information over here. So if I just look up, let's go to the tweak tool later. I want to look at that one later. So if you go on and you want to say how to install Skype on Elementary OS, well, you have to know if you're on Freya or if you're on Loki. Likely you're on Loki right now, but if you come in here and say, I need Skype, and you just start doing the things in here, you figure out where the terminal is, this won't work. Because these functions are disabled in Elementary Loki. And so you'd have to come over here for this instruction where it tells you that you need to first install the GDebi core, And then you can grab the package and then you can install it. I believe that, I think I installed I don't remember how I installed Skype. I don't remember. I got Skype working. It works. That's what you need to do. But you have to be aware that there's, and this raises another problem, and I'll probably come back to this later, but they've changed it so much in the very short life of this operating system that a lot of people who would be looking up problems will look up the problem and you will find instructions that simply don't work. And that lends people to say, Linux sucks. And they'll go back to Windows. And that's a problem. Now, Ubuntu also hasn't cleaned up a lot of that, but if you find something for Ubuntu 12, 9 out of 10 times or greater, it's still going to work on Ubuntu 16 or Ubuntu 17. And so even though all that stuff's there, but if you find a lot of these installation instructions for elementary OS, if it's the older version, it probably won't work now. How to install Discord. Down here, once again, it's having this process here. This won't work. This won't work. So then you might try this, not realizing that won't work, and that won't work, and you'll be like, I can't get Discord, never mind. And so that is a challenge, a major challenge to the elementary system, in that is that it makes it very difficult to install some very common applications that people want to use in this day and age. Number 4. Elementary OS is very different in the appearance and the design. Now, the first is that they actually stole a lot of the styling elements from Mac OS. And if you are used to Mac OS, you'll recognize that this looks like Mac OS. And they have actually stated in their blog post, no, it's not specifically based on Mac OS, and I'm going to call baloney on that. Okay, and like, even the small details. Some people say there's a lot of great details about this. Even coming into the keyboard and look at the shortcuts. Yeah, look at this thing. This is the Mac OS control symbol, not the meta key symbol. Okay, I mean, I've only seen this symbol applicable to a Mac. So even buried deep within the system settings, everything deals with the Mac. Even look at the default browser. This looks like Mac. Mac is the only other place I've seen the close tabs on the left instead of the right for the individual tabs. Everything is stylized and designed like the Mac, except there's a lot of differences in functionalities. And I actually have a pile of little items. How's this for one thing? Desktop icons. Okay, now I have desktop icons working and installed over here, and they actually are functional. On a typical system, like even GNOME, install the GNOME tweak tools and you can add your desktop icons back. You can't do that here. Even on the tweak tool, if you get the tweak tool installed on elementary, you still don't have the option. You first have to install Nautilus, and then you have to install your deconfigurator editor, and then you actually have to add the icons. But then when you add the icons, they don't have the GTK CSS styles on here, and so the icons appear on the desktop with a solid single dark gray color, and you can't read any of the titles. I mean, that's how bad this is. So I had to install Nautilus, and then I had to go into the deconfiguration editor. I had to add a whole lot more configuration settings, and then I had to create a style sheet on my computer to actually get the desktop icons to show up. Because they just don't want you to use desktop icons. They're like, no, we want you to use the system exactly the way we want. And if that's not a way that people are used to, that's just not a way that... it's just not going to be functional for people. Here's something else. We'll get into that in a minute. Okay, that's actually next on the list. No minimize button. Now, you'll see I've added the minimize button. You can add this when you get the tweak tool installed, which is not exactly an easy thing to do. And here is the installation instructions. How to install it. Of course, there's several installation instructions because every version's different. So, they do specify here in the post, at this point, At this point, we want to make it very clear that Elementary OS team doesn't want you to use the elementary tweak tools anymore starting in Loki. But they've also not provided any option to change the themes or the icons in Loki, which is very hilarious because as some people say that they pay so much attention to detail, if you come into the App Store here, or AppCenter, excuse me, and you type in tweaks, There's two tweak tools in here. One of them is the Unity tweak tool. The other is the GNOME tweak tool, and neither of those actually function. Actually, the GNOME tweak tool will allow you to change your icons, but very much, I think everything else in there doesn't work. So you actually end up having to install the tweak tool by following a series of steps. First, you got to install this option here is what allows you to enable PPAs, and then you have to add the PPA, and then you can install it. This is for the current version Loki. If you have Freya, you got to install it this way. If you have Luna, you have to install it this way. So they're really making it difficult in scattering the instructions on even how to fix some basic things. All right, now, all that to start talking about this minimize button. So why is it they don't like the minimize button? Well, here is actually a blog post as to why they don't like the minimize button. Okay. Oh, that one's not it. Oh, is it? Okay, yeah, I was wondering if you guys are putting in a minimize button. Great question. Elementary OS has actually been designed not to need the minimizing. Apps save their state when closed. Open instantly and intelligently background when doing things like playing music. Okay, great. I'm on Chromium right now. Let's go ahead and close Chromium. Let's open Chromium back up. You can clearly see that it saved the state. No, you see, it will save the state on Epiphany browser. If I close Epiphany browser and I reopen Epiphany browser, it is going to restore all the tabs I had open. Okay. Now, and I will also throw in, because somebody's going to leave it in the comment, you can actually click on the icon down here to minimize without the minimize button. So there is a way to minimize, but it's just not the workflow of the typical person be running around and then wanting to do this. Furthermore, there's no, and I think there might be a shortcut enabled to minimize. I think it's your meta key and H by default. I think that's what it is. I can't remember. It's just totally weird. And so what happens is it will save the state if you're using their web browser, if you're using their music app, if you're using their video app. But if you're using anything that any normal person would actually want to use, it doesn't work that way. And so the release of the minimize button and their statement about not needing the minimize button is just, it's balderdash. It's simply balderdash. That's kind of the problem. So there's no minimize button, and how many people are looking for that? It's there. Weird shortcuts, I've already mentioned that. I actually don't want to load the shortcut thing and start tinkering in there, because every time I've done that, it has crashed my system. Loading the shortcut thing crashes my system. I've already talked about tweaks and nearly no customizing. Even when you have the tweak tool installed, there's still very few tweaks. So here I can change my GTK, I can change my icons, I can change the cursor, I can actually change where things are, I can show the GNOME menu. I don't even know which one the GNOME menu is. I thought that was this menu, but I'm not sure what that's actually doing. I don't know. Fonts, I didn't test exchanging those. I didn't mess with any of those. Max volume. Applications, here's just... also another thing about this is that for a new user, single click is enabled by default, and that will really confuse some new people. The only way to change that is to install your tweak tool, which they really don't want you to do. There's your launchers. So here is actually, this is the command. So I guess you could actually install the command here, but you have to have Nautilus installed, I think, to have the desktop. This is what enabled me to install the desktop icons. The terminal, you can adjust some of those, and here's the video applications. That's all the tweak tool allows us to do. So even with the tweak tool, it still gives us less customizability than most systems. And in reality, I really don't find this beautiful and flashy. I find it looking like Mac OS. And if you're on the Mac Apple fanboy train, then sure, it might look gorgeous. But in reality, to me, it doesn't. It actually looks kind of plain and boring. But the number 5 reason is that the various versions seem different enough that the various internet solutions may not apply. Okay, and so those are all recipes for disaster for a new user, especially in this year where we're trying to move people over to Linux. We're trying to say, try out Linux, check out Linux, see if this works for you. And if elementary is high on the list and people are coming over here and saying, let's go ahead and look at elementary, and then you get to the point where you can't adjust things, you can't find the minimize button, you don't know to click on the taskbar at the bottom or the dock at the bottom. What do they call that at the bottom? Pan? I don't know. I think I'd call it a dock if they call it something else. You don't know to do that. You're looking for the minimize button. You can't install your basic applications. Things keep crashing. You can't update the system. It's very complicated to get stuff installed. And you just get to the point where you're just like, screw Linux. If this is your introduction as a new user into the Linux community, it is a very bad first impression. Now, I realize this video has been negative. I know some people have said, some of your videos are negative lately, and I apologize for that. But the reality is, a whole lot of people really, really love Elementary. And if it works for you, and you're a guy that it's got it all working for you, I'm not saying this is universally bad and the project should die. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Elementary is not a distro that we should be talking about to new users. It takes way too much under the hood. And a lot of people, and I know several people that really, really wanted to get it working, that simply could not get this system working at all. They couldn't do it. And when you get to that point where you have a distro that you simply can't get working, even if you want to get it working and you can't get it working, there's too many distros out there that work. This is why I use Linux Mint, because it works. It doesn't give me any problems. And I realize that's not the case for absolutely everybody, but a whole lot more people have a problem with Elementary, even people who wanted it to work great, than have a problem with Linux Mint. And if you're one of the exceptions and you want to scream at me, that's fine. Just keep the comments and the criticism civil and they won't get deleted. Okay, that's the thing. But the reality is somehow this team managed to not only build a system that looked like a Mac, but they also seemed to build a fanboy base, just like Mac has done. I have no idea why, because my experience on this system in the short time I've been running it has been horrendous. From constant crashes, I've actually had to unplug the power from the computer today. Twice. Because the shortcuts keep on breaking. I don't know. So it has been my experience that the Elementary is not for new users. Now, if you're a Linux guy and you love the way this looks and how it designs and how it works and it's working for you, great, awesome. Support the project, please. But if you're on one of the teams of people working on this, take these criticisms back and have a serious and honest discussion about them. Because if the heart of Linux is to prevent privacy leaks and to bring us back into a world where we control our computers again, Elementary does not do that. They might do a great job at preventing the privacy leaks. Absolutely. I see no issue with that. But I cannot control my computer with this operating system. That's just my take. So I will eventually find top 5 things I like about Elementary. I actually have one of those videos. I will probably update it because I plan on running this for at least 1 week. That is my goal, to run this for 1 week. I should probably be able to do it as long as I'm not trying to tinker with it anymore. It seems to be functioning the way I need it to right now. We're going to see what happens. There's more other negatives. I'll probably do another top 5 bad things about it because there's numerous other things on my list that don't relate to new users. I'll get to those another day. But overall, if you're new to Linux, if you're looking at Linux, I implore you, please steer clear of Elementary at this time. There's just too many problems and too many challenges with it. I will have a list of what I consider the top Linux distros to try out in 2018. That's gonna be, I'm gonna shoot to have that sometime by the end of January. Some of the distros that I was going to put on there, I'm not sure if I'm going to, so keep an eye out for that. So thanks for watching. This is a much longer top 5 than I usually do, but appreciate you hanging out and watching this. And again, if you're on the team, I don't mean hatred towards it, but understand that if this is a distro marketed to new users, these are a lot of serious problems that a new user is going to have. And take that for what it is. And I'd be glad to update the video if things were to change, and who knows, maybe I will down the road. So thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out switchtolinux.com/support to learn about all the ways you can currently help support us. And I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.